It's 1914. The powerful countries of Europe are split into two opposing groups. First, there's the Triple Entente, which is France, Britain, and Russia. They're all scared of Germany, which has become the strongest country in Europe. The other group is the Triple Alliance. This includes Germany, who's afraid of being surrounded by its enemies, Austro-Hungary, which is trying to hold its weak empire together, and Italy, who hopes to gain some land from France. The event that starts it all happens on June 28th in a city called Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was next in line to rule Austro-Hungary, is killed by a 19-year-old man named Gavrilo Princip. Austro-Hungary blames its rival, Serbia, for helping the killer. They send Serbia a list of tough demands. When Serbia refuses to agree, Austro-Hungary declares war. Just a few hours later, Austrian cannons are firing on Serbia's capital, Belgrade. Russia's leader, Tsar Nicholas II, feels he must protect Serbia, since they are both Slavic nations. So, he orders the Russian army to get ready for war. Germany's leader, Emperor Wilhelm II, had already promised to help Austro-Hungary. He and his generals think a war with Russia has to happen eventually, and it's better to fight now before Russia gets any stronger. So, they use Russia's actions as a reason to get their own army ready and then declare war on Russia. Germany knows that a war with Russia also means a war with France, Russia's friend. They have a special plan for this called the Schlieffen Plan to handle a war on two sides. First, their armies will move quickly through Belgium, which wasn't in the war. The goal is to surround and beat the French armies near Paris for a fast win. After that, they can move their soldiers east to fight Russia, because Russia's big army takes a long time to get ready. And so Germany declares war on France. Suddenly, 6 million men across Europe are marching to war. Italy, however, decides to stay out of the war. The deal they had with Germany didn't force them to join if Germany was the one starting the fight. The United States also says it will stay neutral. President Wilson and the American people don't want to get involved in Europe's problems. Britain is friends with France, but at first, no one is sure if they'll join the war. But then German soldiers invade Belgium, a country Britain had promised to protect. Britain sends a final warning to Germany, telling them to leave Belgium. Germany ignores it, so Britain declares war. A British army lands in France to help. Meanwhile, the German invasion is slowed down for a few very important days because the Belgians fight back hard at the city of Liège. German soldiers kill many innocent Belgian people. The stories of these terrible events are used by Britain and France to turn other countries against Germany. France doesn't know about Germany's big plan to surround them, so they launch their own attack called Plan 17 into Germany. But in a big battle, they are pushed back, and both sides lose a huge number of soldiers. The British army fights the Germans at a town called Mons, but the British have far fewer soldiers, so they soon have to pull back along with the French. The British and French armies decide to make a final stand at the Marne River, just 40 miles from Paris. Their brave counterattack works. It saves Paris and pushes the Germans back. In this battle, both sides lost 250,000 men. Now, a race to the sea starts, where both armies try to get around the side of each other as they move north. After a few fights, they meet at the First Battle of Ypres. Here, the Allied soldiers fight hard to stop the Germans from breaking through. Again, both sides lose many men. The armies then dig deep ditches or trenches along the whole 350-mile battle line to protect themselves from machine guns and bombs. The fighting from trenches had now started. British warships win the first sea battle of the war, sinking 3 German ships. Britain had the strongest navy in the world, with 29 big battleships compared to Germany's 19. They used their navy to block all of Germany's ports. This stops important supplies, even food, from getting into Germany by sea. The goal is to hurt Germany's economy so badly that it has to give up. But just a week later, a British ship becomes the first ever to be sunk by a deadly new weapon, a torpedo fired from a submarine. These German submarines, called U-boats, could travel far and attack from under the water without being seen. They were a new and serious threat to Britain's control of the seas. Over on the Eastern Front, Russian armies invade a part of Germany called East Prussia. But they make a huge mistake and are badly beaten at the Battle of Tannenberg. 2 German generals, Hindenburg and Ludendorff, planned a brilliant victory, capturing 90,000 prisoners and completely destroying a Russian army. The Russians partly caused their own loss because they sent radio messages that weren't in secret code. Another huge German victory at the Syrian lakes makes the Russians pull back. In only 6 weeks, the Russian army lost almost 1/3 men. At the same time, Austro-Hungary's invasion of Serbia ends in an embarrassing defeat. Their attack on Russia also turns into a disaster, forcing them to retreat after losing more than 300,000 men. A key town, Przemysl, is surrounded by the Russian army. The Germans have to step in to help their ally. They launch an attack towards Warsaw to try and pull Russian soldiers away. This leads to weeks of very hard fighting in the cold winter near the city of Lodz, but neither side could win. Meanwhile, another country, the Turkish Ottoman Empire, joins the war on Germany's side. They declare war on Russia, who they had fought many times before. Turkish warships attack the Russian ports of Odessa and Sevastopol with bombs. At the same time, Russian soldiers cross the border into Turkey in a region called the Caucasus. The war isn't just in Europe. It's also being fought on the oceans and in colonies far away. German soldiers enter British East Africa, which is now Kenya, and take over a town. At the same time, British and French soldiers take over the German colony of Togoland. But when the British try to invade German Cameroon, they are beaten. And in German Southwest Africa, now Namibia, a British army of 3,000 men is captured. A month later, a British attack at Tonga is a disaster, and they're defeated by a much smaller German army. The German leader there, cut off from his home country, starts a war of surprise attacks that keeps many Allied soldiers very busy. Over in Asia, Japan keeps its promise to Britain and declares war on Germany. Japanese soldiers then take over the German Navy base at Qingdao. The German colonies of Samoa and New Guinea give up to soldiers from New Zealand and Australia. But in the Pacific Ocean, a powerful group of German ships sinks 2 British ships. Both British ships sink, and everyone on board dies. 5 weeks later, though, that same German admiral runs into a larger group of British warships near the Falkland Islands. 4 of his 5 ships are sunk, and the admiral dies when his main ship goes down. At the same time, in the Middle East, British soldiers take control of the port city of Basra. This is very important because it gives them the Persian oil they need to power the ships of the British Navy. That winter, soldiers from Austro-Hungary finally managed to take Serbia's capital, Belgrade. But then the Serbs attack back and push them out again. The fighting in Serbia has already cost both sides about 200,000 men killed or hurt. In the North Sea, German warships carry out a quick hit-and-run attack on English towns by the sea. They fire shells at Hartlepool, Whitby, and Scarborough, killing more than 100 ordinary people. On the Western Front, the French start their first big attack against the German trench lines. But this battle only gains them a little bit of land and costs them 90,000 men. Meanwhile, in the Caucasus Mountains, an attack by the Ottoman army in the middle of winter turns into a complete disaster. The Turks lost 60,000 soldiers, with many of them freezing to death. On the Western Front, that first Christmas was special in some places. The soldiers agreed to a short break in the fighting. They even played games of football in no man's land, the dangerous ground between the two sides' trenches.